Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. I received a question recently about unrealistic intimacy and queer relationships. I do have another video about that, and I'll link that up here. This question was specifically asked in conjunction with why do these themes of intimacy and unrealistic levels of intimacy seem so pervasive in queer relationships, especially the first relationship. There's a lot of reasons for that. I kind of want to expand this question into unrealistic expectations. When somebody grows up in a heteronormative society, once they've realized that they are part of the LGBTQIA plus community and they start to become romantically involved with people who are like them and not heteronormative, there's this expectation, not just of physical intimacy, but of emotional intimacy also. So I want to go through what some of those expectations are and kind of talk about how they become an issue and how we get over them. So I found for you a list of 5 unrealistic expectations of relationships. This was in an article about heterosexual relationships. Every one of these, when explained a little better, also applies to queer relationships. Number 1, we expect our partners to know what we are thinking and feeling without us telling them. There's 2 reasons for this. Number 1, it's really just what we see in movies, what we read about in books, what we see on TV, the expectation that a relationship is just so bonded that we don't have to talk and we don't have to explain ourselves. That's not real. That's not how relationships work. This expectation happens within the queer community because once you meet somebody who understands on some level things that you've been through, what you've seen, what's been said to you, the ways that you've had to hide yourself over the years, once you have that connection with someone, it is really difficult to think that they wouldn't be inside your head too. The assumption that no conversation needs to happen and that your partner is just gonna know you, it sets the relationship up for failure. Because if you don't know each other, or if the partner doesn't guess correctly what you're thinking or feeling, then all of a sudden they are not this romanticized person in your life, but they're a human, a normal human that isn't able to read your mind. When you see that, you become disillusioned with the relationship and think, well, this can't possibly be the one because they don't get me on this level where we don't have to speak. The way to get past that is to, during conflict especially, ask your partner to repeat back to you what they're hearing you say. That will help you to learn how they hear you, and it'll help you to understand what it is that they're looking for in your words and how to then change your words so that you're communicating in their communication style, not just yours, which enhances communication across the board in the relationship. Unrealistic expectation number 2, that is, good relationships are void of conflict. That's so unrealistic. The idea of conflict in a relationship, in my experience, goes 2 ways in queer relationships. Number 1, there's an extreme amount of conflict because each partner is sort of working out their baggage on the other one. The other side of it is what this is saying, which is that all good relationships are void of conflict, which similar to the first one, that we will not have anything to argue about because we love each other so much, or we won't have anything to argue about because we get each other so well, or because we have these shared experiences and
they understand me on a level that no one else in my life ever has, so why would we ever have anything to fight about?
You're going to have things to fight about because you're human and you're not the same person. If you never disagreed on any level about anything, I would venture to guess that at least one of you is not being realistic about who they are and what they want. You don't have to have screaming matches all the time to be in conflict. You can disagree, work it out, and be better for it in the end. Number 3, in order for a relationship to survive, it can't change. This one is specific to the queer community in this vein. In most people's lives, most people within the LGBTQIA plus umbrella, in most of their lives, change has meant bad things. Change would be someone deciding not to be in their life anymore because they're out to them. Over the last 5 or so years, change could mean the government going backwards in queer rights. Change in general becomes such a traumatic idea that for a relationship to change, the expectation is, well, then it's not the relationship anymore. This also shows up a lot in people who are neurodivergent. The idea of change in a relationship is a hard one to process because change could mean that you've done something wrong. Change could mean that that the other person no longer wants to be around you, that sense of permanency is not there as much. And that really does impact how you interact with change within your relationship. Please hear me when I say this to you. Relationships have to change and evolve in order for them to stay healthy. Think of your relationship not necessarily as a person that needs to grow and needs food and everything, but like, I don't know, a plant. If your relationship is a plant, you need to water it and you need to give it sunlight and it needs to be put in a different pot with different soil in order to get the nutrients it needs. Change is vital to any living organism ever. Change has to happen for your relationship to stay strong and to stay what you need it to be. Number 4, good relationships mean you spend all of your time together. This one, remember, these 5 were actually written for straight relationships, but this one shows up so much in the queer community in our relationships. Part of this is different for queer relationships than they are for straight relationships, because when you meet someone who understands your struggles, understands your experiences the way someone else in the LGBTQIA plus community does, you are going to want to spend more time with them. There's a reason why some of these tropes about urge to merge and whatnot are out there, because it's a very natural and normal thing for two people who understand each other on that level to want to do. Early on in a queer relationship, especially your first one, it is so important to keep your own set of friends, your own activities, definitely have your time together that is special and yours and protect that, but also have your own time. It is so easy to just sort of meld your lives together and become like one entity, but that's also not entirely healthy, especially in the beginning stages of the relationship. In order for you to be able to continue to feed that relationship, like we talked about in number 3, you have to be bringing in other things. You need to have things to talk about. You need to have differences of opinion, and you need to be able to talk that through. You need to have different interests so that you can, talk about those too, but also so that you can continue to evolve yourself into the person that you're becoming and not just a member of your relationship. One of the reasons this is such a big deal is because, again, back to the idea of relationships changing, it feels like if the relationship changes, then clearly it's going to end. And that's not what it means. A change in the relationship doesn't mean an ending. A change in the amount of time you spend together doesn't mean the other one doesn't want to be around you. It means the relationship itself is growing and changing, and your expectations of that need to change with it. Now, to expect that both of you are going to change at the same time in the same ways is just silly, because you're not. You're different people. So when you don't spend all of your time together, maybe you do spend more time in the beginning, and then as it goes on, you spend less time together. That doesn't mean the relationship is not good or is not going in a good place. It means that you are changing. Number 5 is this idea that good relationships don't actually need any work. You should always be working on your relationship and working on yourself. Relationships, especially significant relationships in your life, can really help you to understand more about yourself, about what you want in life, what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, about boundaries, about who you want to be and who you want to become and who you want next to you while you're doing that. That doesn't mean that every relationship is going to be in your life forever, but while a relationship is in your life, you need to be working on it if it is a relationship that is significant to you. That goes for friendship, that goes for romantic relationships, sexual relationships. If it is a relationship that's important to you, it needs to be worked on. So how do we as queer people get here? We get to this place where we have these unrealistic understandings of intimacy, physical and emotional, with our partners, because a lot of times, currently, it is my hope this is not this way forever, a lot of times we don't get that emotional intimacy and that support from our parents. So we turn around and try to get that then from our friendships and our significant friendships growing up, or significant relationships with other people. When you grow up in a heteronormative society, you are already sort of othered, because the things that your peers are doing and the ways they're discovering themselves and understanding themselves doesn't apply to you, at least not at that time. So in looking for that intimacy that you maybe didn't get from the parental figures in your life, and then couldn't get from your friends and couldn't get from your first relationships early on, once you get into your first queer relationship, it is intense and it is unlike other things in your life, which is one of the reasons that we have these unrealistic expectations, because it feels like that fairy tale that you've been reading your whole life. It feels like those stories that you hear about where your eyes just meet across the room and you know it's the one, and you're just gone forever and it's perfect. That's not real life. It is unfortunately still a sad fact that those in the queer community have to work harder on their relationships, have to work harder on themselves, because there are things in life that are stacked against us. Again, this is my hope that it's not that way forever, and that's part of this work that we're doing here, is to help people to understand themselves, understand their relationships, and understand how to normalize who you are, because it is in fact normal. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you learned something, and I will see you again next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.